Welcome to Sophomore Swag. All right, everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm Joey, and today we're going to do kind of this global teacher initiative thing. I've got Jennifer Bekhuis with me. And Jennifer,
Hi.
you are in, are you in Netherlands?
Yeah, the Netherlands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, it's good to see you finally. We've been trying to set this up, but here you are.
Yeah, I lost there. I lost. Yeah.
So you are a teacher, right?
Yeah.
And what grade are you teaching there?
Yeah, I think you call it a K-16, so it's high school.
Okay.
So our youngest students are 12, so 12 and upwards, 12 to 18.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I'm doing too. So you're doing like middle school to and up. What would be considered here middle school and up? Middle school here is 12, 13, 14, and then high school is 15 through 18 or 14 through 18.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in the same range. Last year or 2 years ago, I taught middle school. Then this past year, I taught high school. So I taught 6, 7, and 8, and now I'm teaching 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I think we're kind of in the same like arena of what we're seeing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the pandemic had a huge impact on our students. So I was just kind of, wondering how that would be long term, actually.
So I have a lot of the questions about that also. I technically started teaching this year, but I taught math last year, but I taught math the year before. So I came in kind of while we were in masks and all that, right? Like right at the pandemic. How long have you been teaching for?
I've been teaching for 6 years.
Oh, good.
Yeah, right. So quite a long time.
So, well, it must seem longer after what we went through during those 6 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's kind of some things that I've noticed, and maybe you can tell me your take on it and see what you're seeing. So 2 years ago, I taught math, 6th grade math. So 6th, 7th, and 8th. So 12, 13, 14-year-olds taking math. And, you know, here in that age group, we're assuming that they already know some basic foundational stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're jumping into ratios and percentages and all that. And I'm starting on my merrily way and, you know, working out our lessons for the day. And within the first week or two, I hit this road bump realizing that many of the kids are missing foundational concepts like long division. They're now 12 years old and they can't do long division, right?
Yeah.
And those students had a whole year of online school, if you want to call it that, and then maybe they had left during the school year the year before that, so they actually had a year and a half of no, you know, one-on-one education, right? Or we don't have one-on-one, but in classroom education, and it suddenly became apparent to me that I was stuck because I didn't have time in a lesson plan to go back and reteach the year before math, right? Were you seeing stuff like that too, where stuff was missing?
Yeah. This is very familiar territory. Absolutely. Yeah. They missed the basics. I don't know about how it worked in your place, but in our country, the junior schools or the kindergarten, as you would call it, they kind of gave them a lesson plan and an online program. And then they just like started the day up in the morning for like half an hour, and the kids were literally left to do it alone with the parents. So so when you say they miss the basic skills, completely see that at our place, absolutely.
And it's funny that you say the parents too, because when I was teaching math, I would send the work home and I would go over it with them in class. And I went through this too as a middle schooler. I'm like, oh yeah, I got this. And then I get home and I go, I don't remember anything about this, right? So the kids would ask their parent, and I'd say, well, what happened to the math? You didn't do it. And they said, well, I asked my mom, but she started crying.
Oh.
And I don't want the mom to cry because of someone's math homework, right? Oh. So there was obvious a big disconnect on where the students were supposed to be versus where they were. And then, you know, I don't know about you, but we start every year in math off with a diagnostic, right? At the beginning of the year, that kind of measures where they are. And then they take it again at the end of the year to see if there's any difference. You guys do that?
Yeah, we do that, but not for my department. We don't do that, but I know my colleagues definitely do that. And
it was interesting because we started, it's 6th grade math, and it showed that not just 1 or 2, but most of the students were at a 4th grade math level, right?
Yeah.
So, and then at the end of the year, many took it and they were back where they're supposed to be. But, I find that frustrating to start with, right? That you're having to pick up a lot of the slack for, I mean, it's not like we're going to get paid extra money to go back and teach that other person's year that they missed, right? Like, you don't get it, right? I don't get it.
Well, the government actually released a thing called MPO money, and then that actually paid for schools to bring in extra teaching staff to kind of bridge the gap. And it worked to a certain level, but I mean, there's only 8 or 9 hours teaching hours a day.
Right.
So you don't want to max out the student completely.
Okay, so yeah, it's great to see that they're putting in an investment in education. It's rare here in America. We have very few states that will put an investment. It's really education where they take the money from.
Because in America, it's individual states. The state determines what the funding is for that school. Yeah,
we work for the state here when we work for education, and it's really the first place where they want to get rid of public education altogether, right? They want to go to vouchers where, they'll give you some voucher, which is good toward a school. And then, of course, if you don't have a large income, you'll have to go to whatever school will take your voucher. But if you have a good income, you can take your voucher and then pay the additional and go to whatever school you want. And that will cause a separation in the classes, right? So really, I feel like education's like being ripped apart here. But I don't want to get into politics. All right, so you're seeing that same issue where kids are missing basic foundation. So
absolutely.
Another odd thing now in the same math class I taught, kids will raise their hand to go while I'm talking because they have to go to the bathroom. So I'll be like, "Hey, Jacob, what's up? Oh, can I go to the bathroom?" Yes, and I'll continue on, and they'll walk up to the sign out. But on the sign out sheet, it says, "What time is it?" Right, and on the clock on the wall in that school, it's an analog clock. So they'll stop me again and go, "What time is it?" And I'll say, "It's right. It's right on the wall, right?" And they're like, "I know, but what time is it?" And I'm like, "Oh my!" And I kept thinking like, and then after like the 3rd or 4th kid doing this, I realized, oh my gosh, they can't tell time and they're 12.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that?
The same. Yeah, and I noticed that with my own child actually because he got used to seeing the clock on the screen. So digital clock was for him the norm, and analog was complete.
Yeah. So I think my son's the same way because he's all connected to his electronics. But so that was another thing as a first-year teacher for me to get through. Like, oh my gosh, what kind of education system am I a part of? Right? Like, am I contributing to this?
But I think you started your career at a nightmare time. Really, I mean, I was lucky. I have the before and the after, and you started right in the middle of the chaos. Yeah. One of the reason I started it is because I wasn't planning on being a teacher, but teachers were getting the COVID vaccinations early, right? Because they're first responders, they're on the front line. So I thought, well, I'll become a substitute teacher and get my little card, right? So I did that, and I was able to get my vaccination right away. And then I thought, well, I'm a sub. I'll go sub for one class. And I did that. And the principal met me, and then right away, that was like in April. In July the next year, he said, "We didn't need a math teacher for the year. You have to come." And I'm like, I wore my bow tie. I was dressed up, and the kids were engaged. And he's like, "We need you. We need you. We need you." And I called somebody else, right? Like, I don't want to teach math, right? And but he was just like, no, it has to be you. So he talked me into it, and it was a good experience. But I just wanted to get my COVID shot like earlier. That was it, and here I am, right? Like, how bizarre is that? All right, so I think we've seen the same thing at missing some basic foundations, right? Yes. I think I don't know if you want to come to this later, but I also noticed that in social skills.
Yeah, that's on my list.
Utterly lacking. Oh, okay. Now
let's jump right to it, right?
Okay.
Like, so what have you seen?
Students are rude. They're completely isolated. They're having trouble reintegrating into a school system. They're used to being on their own the whole day. Some students thrived in that environment, absolutely, and they never did so well. But a lot of students actually got depressed, absolutely depressed. A few of them even got suicidal. So we let them come back to school. We had a thing called like a creche, an emergency school system, and their parents sent them to school just to prevent that, actually, to committing suicide.
Yeah, so we're seeing this. My son went into this kind of introvertedness. As soon as lockdown started, he wouldn't talk to any of the kids outside, and he never recovered from that, right? Even now, his classes are based on, he'll take classes based on how many students are in the class. If there's too many, he won't go to it, right? And so there was definitely a profound effect on some of the students, for sure, that we're still battling, right? So I noticed that also. The students who didn't go through that withdrawal or through that, depression, when they did come back, I've noticed they did lose, like you said, how to interact around other people, right? Suddenly they don't know when it's their turn to talk and their turn to listen. Suddenly they don't know what's respectful, what's not. It's like they lost everything they've ever learned in a year and a half, right?
Agreed. And also with each other. I mean, they swear at each other. They're demanding. They've completely either lost the skill of not really developed it, how to socially interact with each other. Like, please, can I have this? May I have that? Oh, I'll wait. It's not my turn. They don't instinctively know when to go or not to go, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And here's what I attribute that to. They were online for the year and a half. And when you're online, you're someone else, right? Like you can curse, you can be someone else, you can do all that, right? And then when they transitioned back, they just became their online person. And we're like, that's not going to work here, right? Like,
absolutely. No. But also their parents left them to it, because the parents also had to work. They had to work, me included. So the children were put behind the computer in the morning. They were started off. The parents would rush and do their work, and they were just left with their own devices. So as a parent, and normally, your kids are walking around and you hear them, swear or do something they shouldn't be doing, and you correct them immediately. But when they're upstairs in their bedroom or in the kitchen table, and you're in your office and you're both doing your thing, you don't have that immediate correction.
No.
And the teacher can't do that, because the teacher doesn't see that online. It's impossible.
Yeah, now we're seeing it in the classroom, right? Because they're just trying to drag it. But I feel like their online persona is now the classroom persona, and that's not acceptable, right?
No, absolutely not.
So
absolutely not.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just what you said. And like today as well, a student was screaming at me because he didn't agree with what I said. I just sent him away. Said, I don't talk to you like this, go away. And he was shocked, completely shocked. And I said, that's not how you treat someone.
It's not. And I feel like we're having to teach manners all over again. That I'm sure they learned the first 5 years of regular school, right? So I'm noticing that also, that they came back behaving differently. Like you said, they can't function in social settings, right? They're not respectful to each other, like you just said. They will just say stuff to each other that I'm shocked at. I'm like, that is not okay, right? We can't talk to each other that way. We're going to be in this together till 12th grade, right? And then you may see these people again after that, right? At some point in your life. Like, I know that we're different, but we can't treat each other like this, right?
No. The respect is gone. Absolutely gone.
And I almost feel like, right before COVID, like the political climate was changing too, where it became okay to be rude to people here in America. And like, I feel like a lot of stuff is working against them. And I don't blame their generation. Like, I noticed that my son is just a walking version of my bad words, right? Like just, when I see him do something wrong, I realize I did that in front of him at some point, and years later, he's now copying, right?
Yeah.
But I see whenever he does, so I see that in the students thinking, I'm really seeing their parents. That's what I'm seeing, right? Like, or the people that influence them, right? Don't you think?
But when you have parents' evening and you have this child in front of you and you have their parents, and you think, oh yeah, the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. You're a copy of that person. Yeah, absolutely, I see that. But when it's your own child doing it to you, it's really confronting. You're like, oh my God. Do I really? Am I like that? Am I like that? It's like self-evaluation. Makes you paranoid, actually.
Yeah. When I look at my son, it's a shocking view in the mirror, right? That's what I'm getting. I'm getting like the evil mirror, the evil me in the mirror. It's horrible. And sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing that, but they remember that stuff forever, right? That's why, like as a teacher, we're always modeling the behavior we want to see, right? We model, so they copy that. And as a parent, parents should get that education too. They have no idea, right? That they're the model. I always say to myself, or sometimes I'll say to them if I know something's going on, right? Like we can break the cycle right here, right? You can decide to make a change. I've got some kids, what's funny because there'll be times, it's happened in math a lot. We'll be working on a lesson and someone will just start crying, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've given them too much work. What have I done? And I'll be like, let's have a meeting outside in the hall. Come on outside. And then they'll say, I'm like, are you okay? What happened? And it's always like, my mother said she hates me and wishes I was never like it's never about school, right? It's never about my class. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like what have I got myself into? So at times like that, I'll be like, listen, your mom was probably under a lot of stress. I'm sure she didn't mean it, but it's up to you here to decide. I'm not going to let this happen with my future, with my kids. Like I'm gonna work hard and I'm going to make something of myself, and I'm going to make sure my students, my kids, right? I'm able to give them a little bit more than I'm getting right now. Just remember this. Yeah.
But that's where your role changes then. Then at the moment, you're not a teacher anymore.
Yeah.
You're a psychologist or a counselor, and you're coaching them. So the dynamic shifts to coaching role, just like that.
I'm suddenly not getting paid enough all of a sudden, right?
You're not getting paid enough because their problems are burdening you as the teacher. Yes. And I still have a problem with. I have an issue with that, trying to let it go. But I come home in the evenings and I think about one or two children the whole evening, the whole weekend.
Yes.
And then Monday, I'm anxious to see them again. How was it? And then, so teacher, your role changes completely at that split second. Absolutely.
So it's funny that you say that. I often come home on Friday over the weekend and think, here's what worked, here's what didn't. I wonder how, and there's always like one or two students. Or my actual students this year were really amazing. I'm in a STEM class now, an elective, and I only have kids that want to be there. So like I'll go see their recitals if they're in the band or if they're in theater. So it's a little bit different. So here's something I've noticed that's interesting. I never noticed this before, and when I went to school, I didn't see this, but it seems a lot of students have ADHD. Do you notice that? Yeah. Or they're blurting. Yeah. And I can't tell if that's because they literally can't focus on something or because they don't know better than to stop shouting stuff out.
Yeah, and this is worse after the lockdown than before the lockdown.
Yes.
Because in a social setting, which was school beforehand or at home or whatever, they were automatically braked not to blurt out, not to do whatever. And then lockdown came, they were left to their own devices, XYZ. But also they gained a lot. And gaming is instant gratification. It's instant results. Okay, I completed the level. Let's go to the second one, the next. And a lot of children are trial and error. So in school system, they are blurting out whatever. It's because their brains are used to instantly seeing results, and in the classroom they don't get that automatically. They have to wait. They have to go through a chapter or a unit before they see the results. And that is, I really believe that is another serious side effect of lockdown. And also their diet is atrocious.
It is.
Energy drinks, junk food, crisps. You call it candy, we call it sweets. It's just, and the parents, it's just easy to give the kids €5 a day to buy their own food, then make them a healthy lunch.
So I agree with you there. My son hasn't eaten lunch in school in years. He always packs his lunch. I bring it for him because he's a vegetarian, right, or a vegan. So he does that. But there are students that, you get your roster and it tells you who has what conditions, right? This student has ADHD, this student has whatever. So you expect that, right? And you're prepared. But then you get like those other students who don't have any medical condition, at least it's not recognized, right?
Diagnosed,
With all
yeah.
that, right? And then you're like, wait a minute, I don't have this down in my notes about this student. Why is he blurting stuff
No,
out, right?
they're like
So,
sneaky ninjas. They just sneak up on you.
and I almost can't tell the difference. Like he's acting just the way this other person who I'm prepared for, but I wasn't prepared for him. So, and I don't know, is it something undiagnosed, or is it, like you said, instant gratification, which you're correct about, right?
Yeah.
So that whole thing, when I went to school, there was one or two kids with special education, and they were in another class. You know, now, and I agree with this, now with the least restrictive environment, right? You know, everyone should have as close to the same education as possible. And again, I agree with that. And you know, when I have 8 kids that have ADHD or any of that stuff, I'm all over it, right? Like I'm prepared for them. So it's not a problem at all. But it just seems to be there's a lot more students that fall into that category than there were before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I've got a question then. So if you've got this child who you're not prepared for, and he's exhibiting those signs and symptoms of ADHD, ADD, whatever, how do you do that? Do you like communicate that with other colleagues, or do you just have to figure it out on your own?
No, we have a system where we get with his other her other teachers, and we talk about what are you seeing in the classroom? What you know, what are they doing? Is it the same thing, or is it maybe just my class because their friends are there? All of that, and if there's enough teachers saying we're seeing the same thing, they're not able to focus, all that, then we get the parents involved. We start looking into, do they need to be tested to see if they have a learning challenge or disability, right? So I know my son has a challenge. We've known for a long time. He reads stuff and doesn't comprehend stuff. Like he has to
reading,
So now, and I read with him. If he reads a chapter or something and I go, well, tell me about the characters, he's like, I have no idea, right? If we read a page or two, I go, tell me about the character. He's like, oh, it's the Great Gatsby. This guy's bought a house, and he'll go on and on. The more he reads, the less he starts retaining. So I know I have to chunk it up for him, right? Or his teachers know they got to chunk up. So there are definitely challenges that we can work with for sure, right? Like I'm not saying I don't like the challenge. But when I start realizing something is undocumented, like unrecognized, and I might be the first one seeing it or whatever, then there is a system to start working toward. Because if that person does technically have ADHD, then I'm going to treat them a little bit different, right? I'm going to seat them closer to me. I'm going to check in more with them. They're going to make sure they're on track, right? And that sort of thing. So, but you know, it's just odd that coming back from COVID, all of a sudden, there's a lot more attention needed to be to each student that I probably didn't need to do before.
But also, I feel like ADHD is often the most easiest way. It's an easy label. They get pills, they calm down, win-win. The students calm, we can teach. But then sometimes I think, okay, but does this child need pills? Does he just need another kind of stimulation? Is he finding it easy, or is it too difficult? Is there a middle ground somewhere that we can find?
Right.
But like coming back to what you just said about, you know, your son having problems with understanding what he's reading. That's a big issue here in the Netherlands that has been for years already. And that's a worldwide thing, but children are not used to reading anymore. They don't read, they don't like it. They prefer to read their quests on screen because it's short, it's easy, it's instant gratification again. They do it, it's ready. But not every student has a parent at home that is willing or able to sit with them every evening and go through the book with them. Okay, tell me about it, because maybe they don't understand it themselves, and that's just sad. And I think education needs to restructure itself to allow for that as a standard human right. You know, it should be a right and not a luxury, I find. But yeah, you're completely right in what you said. Absolutely. They're not able to.
It is very interesting. I was home for 14 years before I went back to work. So I was the parent that was reading with my son. If he was reading a book, I read it. I wanted to know what he was reading, not because I'm checking it, but because I want to make sure he understands the characters and all that. So I did have that time. And I get that parents might not. And I feel like ADHD is really like, I don't care if someone takes medication or not. I have, you know, what I'm doing is coding and all that stuff. And they're involved in it anyway. I feel like people with ADHD, what they need is just to be kept on track, right?
Yeah.
Because they're doing this, or sometimes like I give them a second whole curriculum that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing them both at once. And that kind of engages them. So to me, it's an opportunity, to do some different things. But, it just freaks me out that there's more now, way more than there probably was before. And I almost feel like, do we just change the way we teach and teach everyone this way, right? Because it seems to be working for these students, then maybe this person deserves it also, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
I don't know that special education is so special anymore. I feel like it's just education, right? So.
But special education is also difficult to come by. Our system has been, bezuinigd. They're stripping the funding. So, and then America, also what you said, and so now children are having to fight for their place in special education where they belong. I mean, it's not right, is it? It's just not right. And teachers, you and I, and our colleagues are not equipped to deal with that in a normal, standard classroom environment. And parents are also not equipped with it. They're just not. And let's be honest. And I think even if I look at myself and my friends and maybe yourself, I don't know. But when your child is having a complete meltdown, it's just easy to say, okay, play the game.
Yeah,
it's just easy to do that. And then, but that game, it is. And no parent is perfect in that. I mean, I certainly aren't perfect in that, but a child of ADHD constantly sitting behind a screen the whole day, it just fires them up more and more to the point where their brain just can't cope with it. And they're so tired, they go complete opposite. So they're completely hyper and impossible to deal with, when in fact, maybe they're just overtired.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a lot of home stuff filling in, causing some of that also. All right, so here's another thing I've kind of been dealing with. It seems like everyone's got everyone's got headphones in their ears. Is that happening with you too?
Yeah. There's earpods. There's earbud things from Apple. Oh, yeah. And they're so disgusting, and they share them as well, eh?
Yes. That is horrible. You want to hear? No, I don't. No.
I mean, if Jan has an ear infection today, you can, Frankie in 2 days' time will also have an ear infection.
Yeah. Ew. No, which is odd because if you're listening to something, then you're only half listening to me, right? So I and my son too. I see him walking around the halls. I go, take those out of your ears. You're not going to wear them in class, so take them out, right?
Yeah.
I'm
really strict about that. I have a huge problem with that. Yeah, I mean, if they want to listen to music while they're working, fine. But ask me first. I mean, it's just common decency, right?
Yeah, and it's in the rules that they can't wear those. And I'm in a code. I do coding and all that. I can absolutely put some music on if they want to hear music while they're working, right? But I don't know what they're listening to, right? Is it something that's going to make them angry? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, is it music? Like, what is it, right? So. And it's almost like a battle I can't win. Like every day I'm asking the same kids to take them off, and they couldn't wear them yesterday, and so they know they can't wear them today, and we're having the same conversation. And I call the parents, and the parents are like, yeah, he has a problem with that. Well, great, we both agree. Now what are we going to do? Right? Like,
yeah. But the problem's there, but what's the solution then? Because now your role has changed again. You're a teacher, you're a disciplinarian, and now you're the problem solver. And then, but it's really like a lot of parents find it difficult to accept what the teacher says there. So, today a girl in my class was hanging over her desk, and I told her off about it. And like literally 10 minutes later, I get an email from the mum. I'm like, yeah. And I was like, come to school, we'll talk about it. So we spoke about it. And the mum was like, oh, okay, she did that. I was like, yeah, but, maybe it's handy if we do the same things, set the same rules at home.
Yeah, have a team effort, right? Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of parents, especially in the Netherlands, the Dutch people are really like, it's my right. Don't tell me what to do. I'll make up my own rules. Yeah. The Dutch are,
Oh my God.
Yeah. And you see that back in the students because, they're listened to. These kids are 12 years old. Their opinions are listened to and valued. And where I grew up, my parents didn't listen to me. I had no say or choice. I had to shut up and just sit there and take it. I mean, Oh, it's incredible. And now, you know, I've got a kid walking around school, 13, identifying as everything other than a person. And
Yeah. It's funny that you say that they're identifying, right? Because, you know, I am an LGBT adult, of course, and my students know that. I swear like 30% of my kids are identifying as something. And I don't know if, you know, I knew early because in my inner workings, physically, I was attracted to the same. Like it wasn't something I made a decision about, right? Versus, are all these kids really LGBT? Or are they, or is this, you know what I mean? Like it almost messes up what we've been fighting for so long, that this isn't a choice when now people are making choices, right? Like it's so strange. So that whole thing is going on for sure, but I don't want to get too much into that. So yeah, the headphone thing and the phone thing, they're all connected all the time. And some of the things like Kahoot or whatever we use on their phones, right?
I like Kahoot. Yeah, I do that too. I like it.
Yeah, I like to do a Friday Kahoot kind of to end the week.
I love it. Right? Yeah.
All right, so it's funny that we're on opposite ends of the world, I think, right? But we're basically seeing the same thing, don't you think?
Yeah, I think this is a global issue. I mean, I don't think, you know, rural countries like India. I mean, I did a thesis. One of my thesis for my when I was graduating was based on online teaching, and I read a study from India, and then that was really interesting actually, because they said they not only outlined the differences between kids with computers and without computers, but who lived rurally and who lived in a city. Okay. So who was in the country and who was in the city. And that made a difference because the country kids were outside playing and the city kids had to be inside in lockdown.
So, I mean, that makes sense outside of India too, when you think about it. So, okay. All right. Well, Jennifer, listen, I thank you very much for joining us today. I hope we can do this more often.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was nice. It was a
pleasure. I love learning about what you're doing and learning that it's basically the same thing that we're dealing with. So
yeah, but if you ever want to watch me teach, you're more than welcome to join me on the online lesson.
You know what? Actually, that's not a bad idea. That might be something I look into at some point. Yeah, especially being
an early teacher.
Yeah, and since we're on different time zones, that could work. So, all right. Well, be well. Hopefully we'll see you again soon, and take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.